today. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kaylee Alexander. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Manager of Tourism Development at Ontario Southwest, the regional tourism organization for Southwestern Ontario. And I want to welcome you all today to Ontario Southwest and Festival and Events Ontario's first webinar in a four-part series. And today's session topic is Festival and Events 101. We also look forward to seeing all of you hopefully in our future sessions. So September 18th will be From Data to Dollars, Unlocking Funding Opportunities for Events. November 27th will be Innovate, Engage, Thrive, the Power of Technology. And February 5th, Unlocking the Power of Volunteers, so strategies for success in event management. And we'll send that information out in our newsletter and our website so that you can register for those future dates. At this time, I'll ask everyone again just to mute yourself and update your name if you can. And before we dive into the amazing content and amazing speakers we have for today, I'd like to start off with a land acknowledgement. So it's important to begin our training by acknowledging the traditional territories that we are all connecting from as we gather virtually across the region together. The relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada today is at a critical point in history, and there's hope that we're moving towards an era of more understanding, appreciation, and responsibility. The event today is taking place on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, Attawandaron, the Lenape, Ojibwe, Chippewa, and Wendat Indigenous peoples, and this territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties in the RTO1 region. We recognize and deeply appreciate the First Nations' historical connection to and stewardship of this land, and acknowledge that they have been the original caretakers since time immemorial. And we also recognize the contributions of Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples in which they have made in both in shaping and strengthening our community in particular, and our province and country as a whole. We are grateful for the opportunity to work here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land. Now I'd like to introduce you to Dave McNeil, who is the Chief Executive Officer for Festival and Events Ontario. He is a respected leader in Ontario's event industry for several years. Dave brings 40 years of extensive background in festival and events, programming, operations, production, sales, marketing. He wears many hats, and promotions in the broadcasting and events industry. His experience includes 4 years at the helm of one of Canada's premier festivals. Hopefully some of you have been, Kitchener-Waterloo Oktoberfest, as well as a long career at CTV. He also taught event management at Conestoga College and volunteered in various positions over the past 20 years with KW Oktoberfest events, including past Vice President, Director of Marketing and Public Relations, and more. Dave demonstrates innovative strategic management skills with a proven track record in successfully implementing business plans. He brings highly developed coaching leadership skills complemented by a common sense management approach to business to successfully meet tight departmental budgets and positive bottom line results. Dave has a reputation for getting things done in a team environment. His favorite quote comes from Walt Disney: "The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing." How lucky are we to have Dave join us for our 4-part series, and I'll pass it over to you, Dave.
Well, thank you very much, Kaylee, and keeping up with my favorite quote, let's get going and let's get doing. I'm joining you today from the lovely shores of Lake Erie in Norfolk County, down in Turkey Point at McDonald's Turkey Point Marina, where I summer for the past 7 or 8 years, and I absolutely love it in your area. To me, it's a hidden gem that I know all of you guys are working to promote and get people down and involved in your areas. But I think what you have down here is something really special and is ready to be shared broadly. As Kelly said, I've been with FEO for the past 7 years, and really FEO operates under 4 main umbrellas. And I'm going to be quick because I know Marnie's got a lot of stuff to go over. So our 4 main umbrellas we operate under are advocacy. We work with municipalities. We work with the provincial government. We work with the federal government. We work with the AGCO. We work with TIO. We work with Destination Ontario to promote tourism, to promote festival and events, and the power and the strength and the community building that together we all do. The other thing we do is our other pillar is education. We host conferences. We host webinars. We have a podcast Theo on the air. Um, we have a program members helping members. We have a suppliers network. So we have a number of educational components that are done both live and hosted on our YouTube channel. We also have a number of networking opportunities with our members. We're basically a 300 member based organization who operate about 2,500 events across Ontario. And then finally, we offer marketing, and we've got a two-tiered website, the front-facing being a consumer-based site, and the rear-facing portion of the site is a members-based site where there are forums, there's abilities to talk back and forth amongst members, there's sharing of ideas and business plans and templates and all kinds of things like that. So that's a lot of what we do. If anybody's interested to find out more, I'm sure Kelly can help you get in touch with us, or you can just look up Festival and Events Ontario.ca on the website and find out more about what we do. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Marnie LaPierre. Marnie's on our board and is our vice president. And Marnie is the owner-operator of Northern Events and Tourism Consulting up in Timmins, Ontario. And without further ado, Marnie, take it away with Events 101.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for making time in your very busy days to join us here. It means a lot to me to be able to connect with the industry, being so far north, but not without experience. So what I will do is we'll jump right into the presentation. I'm going to share my screen and we'll talk a little bit more about what it is that I do. So Event Management 101 is just a little bit of what Northern Events and Tourism Consulting does. This 101 presentation is going to be maybe a little repetitive. You might already incorporate a lot of what we're going to touch on here today. It's a good idea to dust off some of the procedures or take a look at new ways of doing it. So that's why I felt it would be a great way to start connecting with you. So I'm going to get to know a little bit about we'll get to know a little bit about each other. So I'm going to have a little bit to add into the conversation, but I'd love to know what your connection to the event industry is right now and what brought you to the presentation today. So if you want to throw it into the chat or put your hand up and say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so," let's take a minute to just get a feel for each other. So who'd like to go first? Everybody's shy today. Okay, so throw it into the chat. And this way I get a good idea of what you're working on and with whom, and I can ask some pointed questions after. But if not, that's okay. All right, we'll go on to the next. So we're going to talk about me. So my experience with events has gone way back to when I was a little girl and dragged to almost every single pipe band related event in Northern Ontario and some in Southern Ontario. Got into Scottish dancing, so attended many Highland games where I saw what teamwork and what volunteerism can do for a community. I may not have really acknowledged it at the time, but as I got older and got more involved in that particular part of events in our province, as I got older and more experienced, I got a greater appreciation of what happens. I became really involved. It has to be maybe back in 2012, 2011, when I was assisting somebody that was a friend of mine in a Arts in the Park event, and we were hammering in stakes, and the manager of tourism came over, introduced himself, wanted to know what I was doing there because he didn't recognize me, and ended up getting a job offer to work in events in the municipal office. So this is a number of different organizations that I've worked with and that I'm currently working with. I have been involved with everything from one-day municipal government seminars to 8-day music festivals that incorporated an international fireworks competition. I've worked with very, very small organizations to help them build into larger events and not-for-profit groups. And I currently am the president and chair of the Timmins Multicultural Society and Festival, which is a 53-year-old festival this year. And I assist with a number of northern events and as well as some southern ones, such as the Canadian Comedy Hall of Fame and Awards, which was held in Hamilton this year, and the Literary Arts Windsor, working with them on Bookfest. You name it, I've probably done it in the industry, from porta potties to greeting VIPs, and not necessarily on the same day. I have a number of certificates, a number of memberships in different organizations, and a long time event support person as well as coordinator. So I come knowing what I talk about. So event management 101, it's great for new coordinators. If there's some new ones in the group, this might be a good idea to, take a few notes. Every event is different. Whoops. Every event is different. Even if it's the same event annually, it's not going to look the same as the year before. So, oops, why is that doing that? There we go. For the more experienced coordinators, it's a great review of what your event has become and what's worked well, and maybe what can affect some change. So this is normally where it is the who, what, when, where, and why part, but we're going to call it the who, why, when, where, and what. Why is that doing that? Going backwards. So the who, whose idea was this anyway? So when we're talking about this, it's where did the idea for the event that you're looking at managing come from? Is it a municipally led event? Is it a private operation? Is it a group of invested community volunteers that want to bring something new, have something new to do in the community? Who will be on your team to carry it out? Who is your target audience? Who's paying the bills? So where are you getting the funders or sponsorships? Or is it the employer that is, paying for this particular event? An employer could be the municipality who says we want a Canada Day event. It's all subjective to how the event comes about. So as for the who, in working with the event, what is their role? As I just mentioned, as a municipal volunteer or a community group, that helps you formulate how you're going to move forward, because that will identify where your funding is going to come from, where your support is going to come from, even your in-kind, because depending on the organization, if you're employed with them, say for the municipality, you have access to numerous resources because this is the municipal event. But if it is a community group or organization, you're going to be having to ask for, the assets. Who will be on your team and how is your committee selected? This determines how you're going to put your committee together to run it, whether you are doing this as a self-employed event manager, or if you're working with your municipality, or if it's a community organization. How are you going to proceed? A team of one doesn't necessarily mean you're going to cover all the bases, and it's great to have extra hands with it. So this is conversations that you'll have as you proceed through with putting your event together, as well as the target audience. If you already have this in mind, it's a good time to review, because what are your numbers like? What will you target as your maximum attendance? And that will help you determine how your marketing, your programming, your venue, will it have the enough capacity, or does it have too much capacity? Your costs and your needs. And of course, who's paying the bills, because we have to pay for what we're doing for events. It would be nice if it was a free world, but it doesn't work that way 99.9% of the time. So this is where this also affects how you build your team, because if you're looking at having to pursue grants and sponsorship programs. It's good to do a little bit of headhunting when you're putting your committee together and finding people that have that experience or the talent to build on assisting you with that part of your revenue generator. Ticket sales, if you have them, are great generators, but sometimes you need a little bit more to ensure that your programming that takes place during the event is supported financially enough. And even when there's event work to be done, a sponsorship could be in kind, if there's major assets to move around and you require heavy equipment or staging or things like that. So these are just the little things of the who to take a look at when you're starting to build your critical path, which is something I will touch on in a little bit. I'm sure that most of you that are here now have already a program that's in place, but it's good to go back if you haven't over, especially during our shutdowns that we had, a little while back, to go back and dust off the policies and procedures and explore and review again why and who your organization is and what we're doing, or I should say what you're doing for the community. So the why, when it comes to events, and this is just what has been noted, throughout the industry, is that a festival doesn't just serve the organization. It serves a number of purposes in a community. It can be anything from celebrating culture and preserving it. For example, like what we do up here in Timmins with our multicultural festival. We have 33 different nationalities represented in our community, and we bring them together. And there's entertainment on stage, there's food, there's music. And it's a really good community connector. It also works towards, some of the societal issues like diversity and inclusion. It brings the community together, to connect and see one another, get outside of our houses, and just to explore what the community has, including the events. It's a great economic stimulus for your community. It's a tourism boost because when you do your marketing, if you create your marketing plan correctly, you're going to bring in those tourism dollars, which supports your requests for funding, through the, most communities have the municipal accommodations tax fund, as well as maybe your grants to organizations or whatever the process is within your municipality. And it adds to the arts, entertainment, and recreation profile of your community when you're putting these on. So having a good grasp of that why definitely helps when you're in the planning or even the review stage of revisiting what your program is going to look like or what it has been looking like. It can be daunting, but with preparation and organization, it is a great experience. That's why I'm still here. I love working with volunteers. I love seeing a community have something to boast about. Some are award winners through the Festivals and Events Ontario program. So an event can apply for one of the top 100s, or you can even celebrate your volunteers that way. So defining your vision and goals for your event is really important to starting the process of where you're going to head with your event. What is the purpose of the event? What do you want to accomplish? Is it primarily a tourism driver? Is it a celebration? Is it creating a new awareness within the community for a cause or to promote local artists, like a summer concert series? Many communities have those within their local park system where local artists will perform once a week during the summer, things like that. Taking a look at that purpose will help you define your vision and your goal and how you want to make your event successful. So understanding your target audience and tailoring your event to meet their interests and preferences definitely helps to bolster. Now, I've gone on quite a bit, and at any time, I would love someone to interject with a question or a comment. If you've had a success doing something about what we're talking about, please feel free, because this is meant to be an engagement and to help build with your events. I know some of this might be common sense or knowledge, but just touching on it a little bit does help as we proceed. So I'll open the floor up for a second. So if there's anything. quiet group today. That's okay. And if something comes up afterwards, after we finish the presentation, I'd love to connect with you. My information to be contacted is included, and I'm happy to chat with anyone through any format at any time. So selecting the dates for your festival, the when is so important. I like to uh, consult with the surrounding area so that, there's not too much of a conflict. I mean, we do have limited weeks in the summertime, so there's bound to be some overlap, but when those overlaps are found, sometimes it's a great way to work together. In our community, we have a 3-day concert series that happens at night, run by the Timmins Festivals and Event Committee. And at the same time, we also have Festa Italia, but it's mostly daytime activities. So the rock concert benefits from the overflow of the daytime activities, and people from the rock concert that come up to attend will go and visit Festa Italia. So one is in a park, one is in the downtown, and they both complement each other to have something continuous for that 3-day period happening. So, even though there might be an overlap, it's a great conversation to have a bit of crossover marketing and support for each group, because that's what we want to see, right? It's a great network to build when you're taking a look at when your event happens. And your event might have been on the same day for years, and a new event comes up. And sometimes it's perturbing, but it's also a great way to have a conversation to say, hey, how can we work together to support one another? Because that only benefits the community. It benefits both your purposes. You may draw in even more people from both your events. But there are some where there are two major events happening, and that can draw away potential attendees. But it's still, a great way to learn how to work with each other. Considering holidays and religious observances and other community events can affect your attendance or logistical arrangements. There are some holidays or observance of dates that it probably wouldn't look good on an organization to host something. For example, I'll throw it out there, Remembrance Day on November 11th. You wouldn't want to have a great big festival happening. A community perception and optics wouldn't exactly bode well, but it again would depend. Maybe it is a Remembrance Day type of event that it would align with it. Just little things to consider that are just definitely common sense, but sometimes it's good to just brush up on that a bit. Weather and seasonality, you definitely want to take a look when the best time would be. I know for one festival that I was involved with, it ran for 12 years. One year it would rain like crazy, and attendance would be down. Other years it was sunny and beautiful and highs of 23 with a bit of a breeze, which is perfect weather up here if you ever get to come up. So you're at the whim of the weather, and you plan accordingly. There are many different aspects for your event to look at. You can take a look at how you book in your vendors, clauses regarding weather, that if they're paying to be there, rain or shine, make sure you've got that a little bit covered. Or if you have a plan B to move your event inside, if you're not dealing with those type of peripherals for your event, where would the next closest indoor event be? So just, touching a little bit on that. Audience preferences. If you're in a community that is primarily a retirement community, a punk festival may not necessarily be as successful as you would hope. You want to take a look at school schedules, work commitments, vacation seasons will definitely affect your attendance. If you're looking to attract a college and university crowd, but you're hosting your event in July in your community, those university and college students might have already returned home to do their summer jobs. So is that the exact crowd you want to target, or are you looking for more families? If you're looking to attract families, are you going to have the event in the middle of the week or on the weekends when parents and children can attend at the same time? So these little basics. And I can't stress it enough. When conducting surveys, or gathering feedback from your audience to determine the most convenient and desirable date for the event. So this did happen with an event that I'm assisting this summer. People wanted it back after an 8-year hiatus. And when asked, when do you want to have this event? The community selected a date that was recently vacated by another event, so that there would be something on the shoulder season of tourism, which is the end of August into September. So that definitely made it a little easier to host the event for the first time in a while, as well as we know that people will come and see it because this is the date that they want it to happen on. So it's good to connect with your community, especially your sponsors as well, because they're able to provide you feedback of how much support they can give you. Sorry, I talk so much. I get very dry mouth. Do we have any questions in the group or comments in the chat at all? Anything?
Marnie, we've got one comment in the chat from the Calypso Festival in Port Stanley, which I'm really happy to see because it's really reversing the trend that our office and our organization has seen. And they say our festival went from a business association event to a community volunteer event. And way back when, that's what a lot of the business associations were doing, is they were starting events, getting the proper structure in place, and then hoping that volunteer groups would take them over. But lately, what we've been seeing happening is more and more volunteer groups have been running out of resources, risk management, and all kinds of other things, and have been giving up on festivals. And more municipalities, seeing the benefit of festivals, have been taking them over. So to see that reverse happening, I think it's a great trend, and I'm really happy to see it. That's all I've seen in chat so far, other than good work and important stuff.
Yeah, there has been a definite trend change. As Dave said, we've noticed it. It's wonderful to see that municipalities want to elevate the profile of their community, because we do focus a lot on are the roads in good condition, and I haven't had proper garbage pickup in 2 weeks. We do need to remember that sometimes we have to add a little bit more to a community to draw people to it, to keep that the community pride and morale up. And there are some communities that stepped away from it, but the ones that have embraced it have really embraced it by creating new departments and opportunities for municipal staff to get involved in their community. We saw it happen up here with the Stars and Thunder event, where all the departments worked together for the first time in forever. And it was great to get that appreciation of what it takes to have something happen in your community. And, when we see the opportunities to further expand knowledge and sharing of what works and what doesn't with events, especially through festivals, helping festivals, the monthly meetup that we have at Festivals and Events Ontario, where, there are so many new people in the industry that the seasoned professionals want to see it succeed, because the trickle down effect to the rest of the community, to the region, is huge. You wouldn't believe what a farmer's market can do for an event, an eventless community. You bring that together, and people are getting out, that conversation is happening, and people want to engage. They want to have something happening in the community. It's amazing, and I love seeing that happen. And there I go on a tangent. I could talk events all day.
Another question here, Marnie. What do you recommend should be the ideal sample set to generate an understanding on the data?
For the surveys, that's what
Yeah.
we're talking about, right? The 5 most important questions. Number 1 is, how did you hear about this event? Because that is your takeaway of what part of your marketing is working and what isn't. So that if you have to redirect sources to ensure you're getting that draw, that's probably one of the greatest ways of determining that. The second one is, how long do you intend to stay in the community? Because that is going to tell your stakeholders that you've got attendees that are going to um, put revenue into your community. If they're coming from outside of that 40-kilometer range that the government has determined as a tourism draw, then you're able to respond back to your funders, your sponsors, those that are looking to hit a target market to advertise that your marketing has really worked well. You want to know what they liked best about your event, because if that is something that across the board is well received, you want to continue having that as part of the event structure. And let's see, what did I say? Five, right? So that's three. Um, Another one is, what did you like the least? The opposite question to that, because there may be something that just everybody came back and said, don't ever have this at the event again. So it might be something like there was absolutely no activities that the uh, 13 to 18-year-old demographic could participate in. That's something to take a look at. So is that part of your target market, or is that something that the public who's supporting your event would like to see added into it? And then your final question out of the top five is, what would you add to this event? Because if it is, a community-based event, the community has a right to give you some feedback as to what they'd like to see added onto it. And again, I'm going to go back to a personal experience. An example was the Great Canadian Kayak Challenge that we had here for 12 years. Started out as almost a half-day event with a riser, a microphone, and I think 10 kayakers in the water, and a one-way race, like a race there and back on our river system. And that grew into a 3-day event, replete with 13 different food vendors, a beer tent, fireworks, live entertainment on the stage at night with some major names from Ontario and Canada. We had a marketplace, a vintage car, like it grew based on the you should add this portion of the survey. So those are my top five. And,
And as far as
you know,
Marnie, as far as sample size, and I know it's going to be different at every event, because if you've got 35,000 people or if you've got 5,000 people, what percentage is a good sample size of the audience,
uh,
ideally?
I don't really go as to size, but I go as to how the team works. So, we don't start doing surveys first thing in the morning because people are just arriving. So we start usually around 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, where people have had time to come in and experience it. And it depends on your survey team, how many they can get. One year we had 300 surveys done for the entire weekend, because I didn't think that the students who were participating were getting enough. So I offered to whoever got the most got a beaver tail. Don't do it, because 300 surveys is a lot to database post event. I would say you would want to look for at least 5 to 10% of your attendees. Shoot for that, because it's a good cross section over a period of time. And ensuring that your survey team, especially if you're working with teenagers who tend to be a little shy, are instructed that don't just ask women in the ages of 25 to 65. That will skew your results, because it'll look like there's no diverse demographic happening there. They tend to just want to go to the ladies who look safe and approachable.
And I think the other important thing that Marnie mentioned is surveys work best when they're done on site. If you're counting on somebody to go home and send something back, in all likelihood, you're not going to get anything.
Yeah.
So whenever you can sample on site, immediate, before they leave the site, you're going to get a better sample and a better gauge of everything. And I think
Exactly.
the 5 to 10% is the right number. We've got a question from Kaylee, actually. What's one of the most challenging events that you've produced, and what were some of the challenges?
Wow. You know what? Every event does produce challenges, and to various degrees, because it'll depend on the size of the event and how the team has worked together. Let me see. I would say probably my biggest challenge uh, as an
You had a
event
challenging one in
coordinator.
Hamilton.
Yeah, I'd have to say that I had an event in Hamilton that I was brought in at the very tail end of the planning, and it, it the basics, the structure of the event was built, but all the things to make it flow a little bit more simply, to make it aesthetically pleasing, hadn't been attended to, and certain schedules were not applied. So I have to say it was an event that did not have a critical path until I got on there, and it was like going back to the beginning of the event with only 2 months to plan it and replan a massive event. So that was probably my biggest, most onerous challenge where there was a lot of sleepless nights because I was up rescheduling, restructuring, and trying to make it flow.
And here's where I'll jump in with a little bit of things that I've used throughout my career in whatever different capacity I'm working in, and that I've shared with my teams. And it's four key areas, and it's analyze. Once you've analyzed your event, you've decided what to do, strategize what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, your critical path, build your teams, build your plans, execute. And this is where a lot of teams really fail in their, like Marnie was talking about with her event in Hamilton, is you spend so much time analyzing and strategizing that you forget about your execution. And somebody on your team has to really own that task of moving along through those four elements. And execution is so important that sometimes it gets overlooked because we keep talking about in meetings that, oh, what if we did this or what if we did that? And that's fine and good, but there's a time to move from that and move along the process. And then my final stage is always celebrating, and it's celebrating what went well.
Yes.
And whenever I have a meeting that analyzes an event, my rule of thumb is you can't put one negative thing on the table unless you put three positive things on the table, because I think there's much more to be learned from what went well. And I think most people around the table at a meeting analyzing an event know what went wrong and how to improve it at that point. So again, analyze, strategize, execute, and celebrate. And I think if you can move your event along those four paths, move your team along those four paths, you're going to be in a good state.
Yeah.
So Marnie, back to you for your presentation.
No, that's good. That's good. That's a great question. Um, Selecting your venue crucial for the success of your perfect venue. Capacity and accessibility. We all know that those accessibility laws are implemented, and I think it is 2025 that all venues have to be accessible. So you definitely want to take that into consideration, especially if your anticipated crowd does include senior citizens that have a mobility issue, or people that arrive with certain needs to be attended to. So you take a look at your target audience, but for the most part, we operate in fields and in arenas. Most arenas are accessible now, but it's still good when you're looking at different venues to do a walkthrough. If you have somebody that has these needs that have to be addressed, then bring them with you and they can give you a view of what it would be like for them to travel through if you give them a basic site plan of what you're going to be putting down. You want to take a look at what your parking will be like, proximity to public transit routes. There is a big movement to have events sustainable, which doesn't just mean enough revenue to continue operating. It also means, how are your events affecting the ecology? Is there an opportunity to promote public transit to cut down on emissions, carpooling, working with a local bus line to provide access to the event? Or are you working with your food vendors and ensuring that they have recyclable takeaway containers, that they may be doing things ethically? Things to consider when taking a look at your venue. And this, of course, is going to be available to everybody as we finish the presentation. So, if we move through a little bit more quickly, we can always revisit, or I can revisit a certain topic with you later on. The suitability of your venue for your festival activities. We have one arena here that is absolutely horrible to host an indoor concert. It is a pop can. Never mind trying to get a pipe band in there. It just, the sound is rattling. Is the event that you're having outside, is there a bylaw that you have to request permission or a permit for noise? We have one particular park that is right next to a subdivision, and we ensure that, you know, any event going on there does request a bylaw and that the surrounding residents are notified. You know, do you have enough infrastructure to support your vendors and food and beverage area? You know, the electricity, if not, how do we get that taken care of? Is it a municipal request, or is it a supplier request? You know, those little things all have to be taken into consideration, as well as your restrooms. You know, you may think that the municipal building that supports the park has enough for restrooms, but whose responsibility is it during your event? And will it support the number of people that will be attending? Big question. We did just talk about the electrical water supply. Do you have facilities for your performers, like a green zone or a green room? If not, how will you attend to that? You know, we've been fortunate to work with a company called Atco up here that has those traveling trailers you'll see on construction sites that have worked really well. We sometimes get the rooms staged by a local furniture company that, you know, it just makes it look a little nicer. These little bits do help with the planning for your event, unless of course it's inside an arena which has a change room, or, you know, a hotel with a concert hall. How does the ambience and the atmosphere of the venue affect your theme and vibe of your festival? You know, it's a simple one, like when you're holding an outdoor 3-day multicultural festival, for example. You know, is it in a area that will support it? Is it aesthetically pleasing? Is it able to handle putting up 10 by 10 tents? You know, or are you restricted by what the locates say? And, you know, that'll affect how your site map will look. So how does that make the overall festival look? There's one park that we have here that is being reconstructed, but when we host large events, we are restricted by the overhead power lines. As you know, I think it's 10 or 20 feet on either side. You cannot put a structure underneath, like a 60 by 90 tent. It has to be pushed way back. So it definitely affects how the festival looks. They are working on reconstructing that park, so I look forward to a much nicer layout. Your cost and budget considerations. When it comes down to your event, you're looking at your revenues that come in are your ticket sales, if you have ticket sales, or donations at the door. You know, it considers all your costs. You have to sit down and really take a look at what your overall big budget items are, because I know in today's economy, a lot of that has changed due to the pandemic and what happened with our suppliers in the festival and event industry. Just our little community alone went through 2 suppliers closing up shop, one opening who now has, you know, a stranglehold on the pricing for what it takes to get stage light and sound. And, you know, a lot have dropped out of the industry because there was no work for a number of years. So that affects your overall budget, and comparing those costs to what we spent before makes a big difference in what our budgeting asks are for federal or provincial funding, or even within our own municipal funding, because those have increased astronomically. You know, and it's taking a look at what your potential revenue opportunities could be, such as your sponsorship. How has your sponsorships been working? Are you finding that your sponsors are giving a little less because they too were affected by the pandemic, and, you know, maybe looking to align themselves with a larger festival, or they may be pulling back all entirely or going to a different focus? There are some corporations that their head office is a major sponsor for something else and doesn't do anything within the area. You know, Scotiabank Arena, it's Scotiabank is finally coming back into doing some sponsorships on the local level, but for quite a while, it had held off because of their obligation. And how can you offset your costs? The in-kind is one of my favorites when it comes to sponsorship negotiations. We have a need in one of our parks for those portable diesel lights. And that is a huge cost to an event. So we work off a sponsorship agreement, a VIP package, and of course, all the marketing bells and whistles that go with it so that we can ensure that the event can support the programming by offshooting that big expense that we have. Has anybody found new ways and new opportunities within your existing sponsorship packages, or have you found that there's been a bit of a pullback even on the government funding side? What has your experience been? Would anybody like to share something about that?
Marnie, I'll just share. About 6 months ago, we did a survey with our members, and it was basically across the board. Supplier costs have gone up anywhere from 20 to 40%, right across the board. And government funding, they've sort of stretched out their model, and more people are getting funding. More smaller festivals are getting funding, which our organization, we think it's a good thing. We're always caught in the middle, much like the government is on this issue, whereas some of the bigger festivals aren't getting as much as they used to get, which is an issue to them. But, for us, it's across the board. And, I think they're recognizing the need to grow these events in the communities and build it back up. So that's just something we noticed over the last 6 months.
I definitely have noticed it. I'm also a grant writer, and I grant write for large festivals and little festivals. And some are not for profit and others are for profit. And I noticed that the for profit was significantly cut, if not completely out, incredibly decreased from what was awarded before. So there is a shift. And I love seeing that the smaller festivals are given the opportunity so that they can grow into bigger festivals or expand their programming at least to suit the need of what they're doing in their community. So, there's...
And the Calypso Festival shared that their sponsorship has remained consistent, but looking to grow corporate sponsorships. I think that's consistent across the board. I know in a lot of communities, the mom and pop shops who were always consistent with helping grow the festival network have had a really tough go of it. And some of them are struggling to survive themselves. So, we always share the message that it's important to shop local because they're what help build community. And when we're all looking for support and help, that's who we tune to first. So in a time of need for all of the local businesses in your communities, it's where we should all turn to first as well to help them and give them a leg up as well. So it's important to remember to give back to your community in many ways as well.
Definitely. You see a lot of events will be adding new components on to their festival to support their community and to support their sponsors, to help them brand while they're out there. The Timmins Festival is an event committee that does the Rock on the River here. For the first time has added a free zone to the area so that during the day or earlier before the concert start, there is a family aspect where there's free children's activities, and I think they're giving out candy and things like that in alignment with what their festival is. So and they have it as a title sponsorship, which I think is a fantastic way to go. But it's true. It's getting that recognition for the smaller contributors out there, and working with them to see that they achieve their goals through their sponsorship. Not just having their name up on a poster, but what else can they do? Do they want an activation? Flyers, buck slips, whatever, to get it out there. It's a definite new way to approach your sponsorship program. I do a little bit of sponsorship development too, so it's.
So the other thing I was going to jump in with, Marnie, is when you're doing your budget consideration, and it's more than consideration, and I see a lot of festivals that sort of fall into this problem area, is they build a budget based on what they hope to get and then they start executing based on what they hope to get, and then they don't end up getting what they hope to get, and then they're
Yeah.
in big trouble. So I think it's important and it's critical that along the way in everything you do that you're building a couple of what ifs into your program. What if we don't get that granting? What if we don't get the municipal funding? What if our major sponsor drops out? And you have to keep monitoring those and adjusting your programming as you go along, or else you're going to be in a big jam at the end of it. And I think we see a lot of people doing that. And I think it's the importance of dusting off stuff like this every now and then, because the more organized you are going into stuff, the more ability you have to adapt to problems. And we're always going to have problems. We're always going to have issues to come up. And if you're already going into a program where you've got a critical path and you've got a plan on how you're going to operate, and you've got plans on, 3 different scenarios on what you're going to do if this happens, it gives you the ability to think and to flow and to do other things when really big issues come up. So it really is critical. And the financial part is becoming more and more critical, that festivals take into account that it's not always a guarantee. And unfortunately, the last few years, the government has been late in announcing some of the grants. And, a lot of festivals had to move forward and make decisions based on hope. And I know a number, their hopes just weren't hopeful enough and ended up in a bad situation. So always important to have those different situations. Consider your festival like a business, do those audits, do those check-ins, and have plans on, okay, if I don't get this funding, I'm going to drop this, and this, and we're going to move these things around. So have that planning so that when it happens, you know what you're going to do and you're not scrambling at the last minute.
That's
Sorry
true.
for rambling on. Marnie, over to you.
What you're saying is absolutely true. And a lot of the government funders do ask that one question: what will you do if your submission is not successful? And that's where you give your plan B or C. And it's good to have that thought in. It's like, where are those cutbacks going to happen? And how will this affect and this is a really good question. They don't ask it, but this is what you need to think of. How will that affect my application next year? Because if it is a Experience Ontario grant that you're not successful for, and you want to apply next year, how are you going to show that you're eligible next year if your target for putting so many, I hate the term, but so many heads in beds for your revenue from tourism, uh, if you weren't able to do your marketing? So are you going to continue with your marketing plan but scale back on your programming, or where will that happen so that you know that you will be more eligible the following year, either to get some funding or increase the amount compared to what you got this year? So that plan B has to consider what next year might be, because we know that, well, we're hopeful that every year the provincial and federal governments will continue with funds for festivals. So just one
And a
other
question
thing.
Question in chat, Marnie. Our festival will be entering its 4th year in 2025. The Kettle Creek Environmental Trust hosts the Kettle Creek Food Truck Festival in St. Thomas, and it's grown exponentially. In order to grow, I'll be looking for new funding opportunities. Until this time, we've relied on sponsorship and reserves to fund programming. Are there grants, funding opportunities for our festivals that also act as fundraisers? I should add that funds raised support local.
There's a few streams that
Environmental
we
projects,
look
sorry,
into.
for the community.
There's definitely a few streams to consider. Like if you've been sponsored to date, and it shows that you're in your 4th year this year, going into your 5th. Um, I would say that there's definitely history there that will keep it eligible for a number of different opportunities. With that, especially Experience Ontario wants you to have at least run the year before, so that's definitely one of them. Yeah, there's a number that would be eligible for it, and I can connect with you after the presentation and give you a list, because it's well worth looking into. And once you've done one application, you can pretty much fit in with all the others. I have to say, Experience Ontario is a great learning curve, and it'll help with anything that you apply for going forward because it seems to have set the standard. But yeah, definitely we can have a chat afterwards, and I can direct you towards some really good grants. Definitely.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
few other people would love a list too. So Marnie, we'll just share it with Kaylee and their team, and then they can share it out to everybody. So
100%.
we've got about 4 minutes. Is that right, Kaylee? It's an hour. Yeah, can you get it done, Marnie?
I can whiz through because I think we've got some pretty experienced people here, and I won't dilly-dally. So, for this, I think is if you're going to take anything away today, this list right here, it is golden. So, what are you going to need for your festival? Some of this you're already going to have, but it is also good to take a look at reviewing what you're working on. So, your business plan and your critical path are two different things. Your business plan is basically an identifier of what do you want to do with your festival? What is its purpose? Who are your stakeholders? Actually, that's not the right term anymore. Who are your partners? How is it going to happen? The critical path is your task list to make it happen. So under your business plan, you'll identify that you will have a health and safety committee. Under your health and safety committee, it'll be identified in your critical path that these are the steps to ensure that you adhere to a health and safety plan, which is da 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 da. I have the world's best ever critical path that is probably too much for an event and can be scaled down for the purposes of different events. That in itself is kind of another training session that I use, but it helps you avoid having things slip through the cracks. It covers everything from A.100 to Z.9999. What is your team going to look like? So, are you a committee? Are you a board? Are you a group of individuals that are like-minded and want to put on a country concert? Let's take a look at what that team is going to look like and build those roles. Where are you getting your funding to do this? Are you going after municipal funding, provincial, federal sponsorship, donations? How are you going to fund the event? How are you going to ensure that the programming, the supplies, the venue, if you rent it, do you have to hire staff? Do you have to hire contractors? How is that all going to be paid for? And having a team that can help you do funding, I recommend 100% because grant writing is onerous. Sponsorship management is onerous. That is relationships. It does take a lot of time to make those asks. Your location, where is it going to be? Is it conducive? Is it accessible? Your permits, what needs to be gotten? Do you need noise permits? Do you need road closures? Do you need alcohol permits? Do you need special event permits? For example, our health unit up here, if you are not preparing food in a certified kitchen, like a restaurant or a church kitchen or a community hall, and it's being prepared at home for example, a multicultural festival, Auntie so-and-so always makes her shortbread at home, then this special notice is normally produced by the health unit once you identify that you're cooking from there. So those kind of permits. What suppliers will you need? Will you need extra electrical equipment? Will you need to have a stage light and sound company come in? Will you need somebody to run your alcohol beer tent? Or is that something your organization is going to take on? What is your network? That includes your suppliers, that includes your, not your, well, it does include your attendees to a degree, your entertainment, your sponsors are a big network, your advertisers, what is your network? How are you going to get the word out? How are you going to make it work with the team that you've selected? And what is your flexibility? How flexible are you? Are you able to work all of this and understand that at any given moment, plan A will turn into plan B and sometimes a little bit into plan C. So with building this together, how flexible is it? That is such an important question to ask. And these are things that I can meet with any of you to, to go over if there's questions or you weren't quite sure what I was talking about. This is what you need for your festival. This is the beginning. And your team, I should also mention, does involve your volunteers if you've got volunteers working, because without the volunteers at your festival, if it is volunteer driven, it's going to be really hard to pull that off. Critical path, I discussed that a bit with you. I do have a template that I'm happy to share because I think if everybody follows a critical path, that their event will be about 99% successful, and that makes it better for the industry across the board. It is a bit of a project management tool. It makes your members of your team accountable, and it helps you get an overall picture of your event at any given time where there may be something falling through the cracks that has to be addressed or changed. It's a great way to keep on schedule. This is the example of what I have. It is pages long, but I don't use every single item for every single event because sometimes it's not required. Like I said, I tend to do overkill. It's part of the risk management. Risk management is a whole training session I recommend anybody to take. There are some available through Festivals and Events Ontario, which we can connect you with. If you have not developed a risk management plan for your event, I really strongly encourage you to do so. It's more than just putting that ladder away. There's a whole section about what we can talk about for that that whole section of risk management. And like I said, that would be a whole other section. You already, I'm sure, understand about volunteers because you probably work that already. And this is all included in the presentation that you will be receiving. Money Talks, we talked about sponsors already and grants, surveys and reports. Now, surveys, we talked about. Reports, you can put together from the results of your event, from your financial documentation, your surveys of your attendees, and you should be surveying your vendors, your food vendors, anybody that has presented or exhibited on site, and put that all together into your reports that go back to your partners, your supporters. You will want to provide this to your sponsors so that they can understand what their return on investment was from the event. You want to make sure that you identify them in the report. If they've had a interactive exhibit, speak with those that ran it and ask how many people came by. Did you make any sales? And include this, and this helps you planning for the next year. Nurture your networks. Just because your event is over doesn't mean that your relationship with your network is over. It shouldn't be a once a year ask and then wait another year to speak with them. Send them those reports, reach out during the holidays and wish them the best. Send them a reminder photo of how the event was so that when you approach them in the new year for their contribution once again, then you are front of mind. They remember you and they don't feel like you're just coming to make the ask. And continue to build your networks. And open discussion now. Is there any questions before we leave? I'm sorry, like I said, I could go on about this all day.
Marnie, you did a great job because I mean, you can. That's a 4-hour course. It's a 1-day course. It's a 1-year course at some colleges. So,
I'm still learning.
is really good. So, any last questions? I know we went a little bit over. Sorry about that, Kaylee. But hopefully everybody found the information important. And I think you put a note out to everybody that will be sharing the deck. Marnie will be sharing her deck and information with everybody. So if anybody's got any final questions, otherwise, thanks for having us. And we look forward to joining you again in September.